So I think since this is a sport and we have actually 4 minutes to the top of the hour, and I think we will still need about 10, 15 minutes. I will hand over to you. If you have any question or clarification that we may want to seek, and then I can provide answers. Over to you, Bob.
Okay, I thank you very much. Much humbled, to be engaging you, and I say this with a lot of sincerity, because I've known you, for many years, and one of the things that I've come to appreciate of you is your focus on young people. Yes, your focus of young people is something that is really, it's encouraging, and I think we need to acknowledge that. So why do you find young people as of much importance to Africa's growth?
Yeah, thank you very much, Bob. And I appreciate and thanks for the great work you do in driving climate action and transformational development through the low emissions lens. The point is this: you can only go to war with the army you have, and you can only operate from a position of strength. And if you look across the world, and more so in the African continent, the young people are Africa's strength. They have the numbers, they're energetic, they're passionate. Their ingenuity level is beyond comparison to any. And their vibrancy is such that if you are able to tap into that and guide them, and more importantly, they are not contaminated. When I say contaminated, is they didn't grow up in a generation with baggage. When I say baggage, is they do not have the same challenges that were faced in the 60s or in the 70s or even in the 80s. Most of them were born in the early 2000s and late 90s. And what that means is that the world in which they were born into had challenges that were pretty much different from the challenges that were in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 70s, and in the 80s. And then there was the outburst of technology, internet, computers, mobile technology, and this gave them the opportunity to then know what we at the very age didn't know. If you see today, my 13-year-old daughter already understands how to use the internet and use social media, and at the same time even appear on TV to be able to explain what she's doing through innovative volunteerism. We never had that opportunity. So when you look at the opportunities that these young people have today and the challenges they face, those opportunities they have outweigh those challenges if they are tactically leveraged to then be able to use what they have to address those challenges. And when they're addressing those challenges, they create opportunities. So I do believe that if we can tap on the ingenuity of young people, on their talents, on their skills, on their passion, on their creativity, we can then be able to address the monumental challenges we face. Because let's face it, Africa's youth are Africa's sovereign capital. And when you use your capital, because human capital, as we say, is 4 times the value of produced capital and 15 times the value of natural capital. That then means that if they are skilled and leveraged and inspired to self-believe, then Africa will have everything it needs to be able to address the environmental challenges as well as the developmental challenges they face. That is one aspect. The second aspect why I believe in them is that if you take the population, as I said, 60% it's youthful. And at the same time, they are the ones who are actually facing the biggest level of unemployment. 60% of the very population, they're unemployed. How will you be able to create the solutions that will create the jobs for these young people? You need them. At the same time, if you don't create opportunities for them, they become the biggest threat to the continent. Because if you take the age group beyond 60, 70, they're quite very few as compared to the young people. And those young people will be graduating to the age group of 40, 50, 60 in the coming years. If they are not skilled to then be able to provide solutions, they'll be inheriting the challenges that they have been complaining about today, and then that will become worse. Then the continent will become a ticking time bomb for chaos. And that is something that is more dangerous. So my focus on them, and I believe in them, it's from the opportunities perspective, but at the same time, also from the perspective on how to prevent an avalanche of trouble into the future. Because if they are not tapped today and inspired to self-believe, then we will end up having a more bigger burden than what we think we have today. And lastly, if you look at climate change and environment, yes, of course, we need finance. That's very important. Yes, we need technology transfer. Of course, that is very, very important. Yes, we need capacity building. But who are those to implement? Our mothers in villages need replacement of charcoal with biogas, with briquettes. Who are those who are going to produce? Our mothers are older, they will not have the energy to produce this solution. It is the young people. We need value addition. Who are those who are going to then be able to produce the tools that can be able to add value? Young people. So you will notice that any dimension to transformational development can easily be brought by young people. They have the energy, the ingenuity, the ideas, the talent, the skills. So leaving the art of any equation, no matter how excellent the idea might be, we will not succeed because the young people are the intervening force to be able to address any challenge, both from the perspective of the tools, of the inputs, and from the perspective of ensuring that at least sustainability can also happen.
Wow. 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 Very loaded answer. Very loaded.
Yes.
Yeah, very loaded.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, so my second question will build a bit from that, and it follows from the work that we have been doing across the continent. Actually, I'd say you are the first person I ever had, and that now it actually inspired me to even take that dimension of climate and environment action as an opportunity or an investment opportunity. And you have done this with results at the high level, for example. Yes, I know, that you were among those who pushed, for example, to have countries adopt the AMSOM decision on innovative energy solutions, which was for me was a flagship environmental decision that offers an opportunity to draw in non-typical actors within an economy to then unlock the investment opportunities in climate action. I'd say, so what do you think has been the performance of this dimension, of this narrative of climate action as investment opportunity so far? What do you think has been the performance of this?
Excellent. Thanks again, Bob, for that question. The reality is that if we do not appreciate progress, we can never make progress. And I've always said that Africa is not collapsing. And I think that anytime, anywhere that Africa is discussed, it must be discussed from the perspective of progress. Have Africa progressed enough? I don't really think that any country in the entire world has progressed enough, but the progress they have made is different for each and every other country. So what am I trying to say? If you take Africa as a continent, Africa has progressed very well in terms of policies. If you look, the Africa of today is different from the Africa of the 60s. The innovations that we look across the continent today, before I come back to your answer, whether we're talking Cardopad, which was developed in Cameroon, or we're talking about robotic street lights in Congo, or we're talking about information communication technology applications that connect mothers to farms, to markets, to assess inputs. I mean, we keep seeing this. We're talking about tools that young people are developing, like solar fridges, where they're decentralizing for mothers to use pay-as-you-go model, and even solar dryers. I mean, there are a lot of innovations. But when you look at why excellent policies like the Innovative Environmental Solution decision that was taken by the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment, or even the Paris Climate Change Agreement that have been ratified by over 52 African countries, and now they're ramping up the revisions of the plans that they put in place. Beautiful ideas, amazing on paper. We must applaud Africa for that. When it comes to policy, I don't really think there is any continent that can really compete with Africa that much when it comes to putting policies in place. The biggest challenge that Africa faces, I really put this within the 5 I's. So Africa doesn't lack ideas. Africa doesn't lack innovation. So when it comes to ideas and innovation, I think Africa is tier 1. But there are 3 I's out of those 5 I's that have not been addressed. And one of them is incentives. The lack of incentives. When we talk incentives, the mindset always goes to, oh, it's money. No. Inspiration is the biggest missing incentive that needs to be injected in each and every one of us. Because an inspired human being is unstoppable. An inspired human being, and especially an inspired youth, to know that he or she can be able to do it and guided to do it in a structured way, you will see wonders. Of course, this will take time, but when we start doing it and people can be inspired to self-believe that you can do it. Yes, you may not have the answers today, but if you focus and dedicate and put in effort, you will achieve it. So incentives is very, very important. The other one is institutions. And I think you alluded to this in the answers that you gave earlier. The institutions are there, their mandates are clear, but do they work for the people? Do they carry out what they're supposed to carry? Yes, if it is an institution like a standardization institutions that is supposed to put in place standards in a country, do assessing these standards, let's take for example, briquette standards in country, where in most governments' finance bill, there are tax incentives that are given to young people to then be able to produce briquettes. If those young people are to get those standards and make sure that the process is followed, will there be bureaucracy or not? Most of the time you see that there is bureaucracy, so that becomes a disincentive to the young person to even do that. So when we look at these aspects of institutions, the question is, are institutions working for the people or working against the people? That is a disincentive. Then the last part is implementation. One of the biggest actually hills for Africa has been the fact that, yes, the proliferation of excellent policies, finance policies, infrastructure policy, environmental policy, development policies, and all the rest, education policy, health policy, when the rubber hits the road, that's where the reality now dawns. Policy implementation is at its lowest. And this seems not to change. Then the continuous proliferation of policy without focusing on why do we need another policy when we have not tried to implement what we put before, and then learn from that policy. And the only way to address this implementation is to build on what works, because Africa's development model cannot be a run-of-the-mill or the roll-of-the-thumb model. It must build on what has worked and the gaps identified fill. That way you will move Africa's development very quickly and with impact feel by the communities. Because one of the aspects is, as I said earlier, you go to war with the army you can only win and compete from your position of strength. Africa's strength is her youth, and more so the informal sector that creates over 80% of the jobs that the continent actually have today. So if you engage the youth and engage the informal sector to close the gaps, and from there build on the data that is coming out of that to help inform the already existing policies or create new ones that have never existed to close the gaps of the informal sector, your economy will grow. And I just want to end by saying this. When you hear discussions about development, especially within the context of Africa, sometimes it baffles me because the discussions focus most of the time on the macro level. Yes, that's important, but that's not really where the big issues of Africa's challenges are. There at the micro level. The over 80% of the population in Africa is rural. These are mothers, these are brothers and sisters, our fathers, who actually do not even sometimes have the meal to feed their family, but they have the ability to get up every morning inspired to go to the farm, to be able to fetch food for their kids and send them to school. But their challenges are not that big in terms of how to address them. They just need a borehole for water to drink. They just need a simple solar dryer to add value to their vegetables, to their beans, to their maize, to their rice, so that at least it can be able to even stay for 6 months as they look for a market. So when you look at those simple solutions to complex challenges that can be solvable, when they're ignored and then the macro level of big roots, which are needed, but sometimes without addressing those nitty-gritty things in the community, we end up having a mismatch between what is needed urgently that could have helped fit up into that macro, we're now having macro being forced down to micro, which doesn't work.
Wow. Hey, wow. Honestly, I hope we can just have this segment really somewhat lifted and presented somewhere so that it can inform more people, because I think these are nuggets that are really, they're very important. Okay, my third question will be more personal now, because I think I read your book. I've read your book, and within it, there's a place that I think is where the juicy stuff now starts, where you talk of your moment of epiphany. Yes, what made you discover your value, your purpose, and your need to offer value? Yes, and you talk of the challenges that were prevailing, within your community at the time, that you came to realize that actually challenges are faced within the broader community and indeed the entire continent. You responded differently. Yes, you responded to offer solutions to those challenges. Those challenges that you talked of are not unique. Most people are facing the same thing. As we speak right now, most of us have seen those things, but we not necessarily respond the same way. Africa is generally a continent of adversity, and what you talked of is something that is not strange. People see it all the time. So, why do you think you responded differently and others do not necessarily respond the same way?
Thank you again, Bob. I mean, this is a very important question and personal, as you say, but very relevant to the issues we've discussed about climate change, to the issues we've discussed about environmental challenges, and to the solutions that we are preferring here today and in other spaces that we have had even the opportunity to write them. Let me put it this way. The truth is, the purpose of life is to be useful. And each and every one of us must find it in our own selves with an answer in answering this question: what am I useful for? Because the reality is, and I like the word you use differently, that I responded differently. Yes, we are different. We are differently made with different talents and skills. But our purposefulness is same. Usefulness. That is the commonality. When we are useful, we will be useful in different ways, but at the end of the day, we are useful. And unless an individual, regardless of how old you are, accept that I have to be useful to do something that goes beyond my immediate family, to touch my broader community, we will continue to face the challenges we face today, because we are talking at a time when there is selfishness, when there is a lot of hopelessness. And the hopelessness is coming from the fact that people still think individualistically. Oh, I'm not having what I wanted to have. Oh, it's all about individual. And then you end up having a collection of so many individuals thinking individually rather than thinking collectively towards preferring solutions to ensure that they are useful to the communities and to the society. And so what actually inspired me and still inspires me today is that, like I said and you said, we must become the benchmark of excellence in whatever thing we do. And we're not becoming benchmark of excellence to be applauded or to be awarded. If that comes, so be it, but that should never be the intent. The intent should be benchmark of excellence to be useful, to do that which touches many other people's lives. And that should make you happy. And once you are happy with what you do that touches other people's lives, that is the biggest fulfillment that we should live for, regardless of what we do. And so that purposefulness of doing something that fulfills you to be happy is fulfilling enough that any other thing is secondary. And so if a mother can be able to put a smile on her face that I was able to dry my vegetables because I had a tool to do so, that have actually been decentralized to her by youth who are inspired by you to do so, that puts a smile on your face. If a mother can then be able to extend her life by just a year or 3 or 4 years by moving away from depending on charcoal and using fuel briquettes, which were made as a result of us going out of our way to inspire you to retool their skills, to turn waste to briquettes, that should put a smile on our faces. That is usefulness. And unless we start to see things this way, that if whatever thing we do wherever we are, contributing to the broader good of the community, is our part of fulfilling our existence on the planet Earth, which should be usefulness, not causing pain on others, then we are succeeding. Because success is relative. It should not be benchmarked on materialism, as is the current case today. It should be benchmarked on the number of lives touched positively, on the mothers who can put food on their table as a result of our actions in whatever thing we do, as a result of ensuring that we are helping you to become better versions of the solutions that we need today. That is what is important. And so those aspects are what always motivate me. And that is why when I saw my mother unable to harvest because there was a drought and we had crop failure, unable to put food on the table, when we went hungry, when we started begging from our neighbors, then it dawned on me that something needs to be done. And instead of asking the question, who should do it, I said, what should I do? And that's why then I took upon me to give my best in studying and giving my best in doing what I can do to provide answers to that. And that's how it's all about. So the nutshell of it all is our living on earth should be manifested through usefulness, purposeful usefulness in whatever thing that we do, because that is the most important thing that we should always be able to do as we move forward.
Wow. You just answered a question that I had somebody asked, a prominent person globally asked, that what is the purpose of life? Because what you just mentioned now, you've actually broken down the purpose of life, being useful. Somebody was asked that question and fumble around and answer. You don't really get what they are trying to do. But I mean, I appreciate that, that clarity, that the purposeful question.
And thank you for asking that question. I mean, it's a question that a lot of people don't know. They actually, a lot of people actually do not know that your existence is for a reason. That reason is purposeful usefulness. You must be useful. And the usefulness is not for someone to give it to you, it's for you to do it. People can only support you to do something, but you must ask, what am I doing that touches people's lives positively? So if you are not doing that, then it's never late. You say, from now, I have to start doing it. And I think once everybody answers that question, what is my usefulness to the community? And we start playing our part, then the sum total of the collective effort will become so big that it will then turbocharge solutions that will then turn all the challenges into opportunities.
Wow. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that answer. Yes, so the final question is related to that. And, we have to appreciate that part of being useful is going the extra mile. You cannot do the ordinary then to be useful, as you've said it. So, going the extra mile, is not always appreciated. Yes, you'll face difficulties. You'll face discouragements and all these things when you try to go the extra mile. How do you remain consistent? I mean, yes, how do you remain consistent and not be discouraged when you try to go the extra mile and maybe you're misunderstood and you're not encouraged basically. So how do you remain consistent on that journey of purpose and going the extra mile? It is something that very few people do actually, going the extra mile.
Yeah, thanks again, Bob. The reality is this: if you want to be useful, which builds back on my last answer, be ready to be misunderstood, because the process of usefulness brings innovations and bring ideas. And if you want to do things differently to address challenges, people will misunderstand you and people will say things or try to push you around and try to do that. You should be prepared for that, because the reality is that life is not a place of ease. And anytime you want to address a challenge that deviates from the norm of complaining, that deviates from the norm of what everybody is used to, you want to, there is bound to be that resistance. But consistency becomes important, because if you know what you want, and you have a very clear unborrowed vision, where you want to go, what you want to do, and why you are doing it, it becomes very, very difficult. Like I said earlier, it's an inspired and passionate human being is very, very difficult to stop a passionate human being, because he or she will find an alternative way to still achieve the same result, regardless of how that is. And so what keeps me going and being consistent is that there is only one pathway to making a difference in people's lives. And that pathway is to provide solutions to the challenges they face. 60 years ago, the challenge of food insecurity in Africa was discussed the same way it is discussed today. So people are still looking for solutions to put food on the table, to reduce post-harvest losses. People are looking for solutions to reduce indoor pollution that is causing over 700,000 deaths in the continent of Africa. So we have to keep the motive the same, to find solutions to reverse indoor pollution, to reverse post-harvest losses. And so that consistency of solutions must be there. Are you going to face obstacles on the way? Of course, that's part of the process. Part of the process is also facing obstacles. But what it teaches you is to recalibrate very quickly. And so when you have that in mind, that at least it's not a linear or a straight line to get solutions to problems, then it becomes very easy, because regardless of what you face in terms of obstacles, in terms of bridges on the way, you will always recalibrate to keep pushing until you find a solution. And another aspect is even when your solution is found, the uptake of that solution become another problem because people do not believe sometimes even in the solutions that are provided to them. You start to, so it's continuous recalibration. But what inspires one to keep going is that at the end of the day, that mother in the community will then be able to use briquettes. The mother in the community can then be able to substitute charcoal by using burgers. You can then use a clean cook stove. You can then use a solar dryer or a solar fridge. All those aspects added up together are what keeps one going. And it boils down to one word, purpose, which is supposed to be our usefulness to the community. And without the usefulness, we need to be consistent, persistent, and at the same time, self-discipline. Because without self-discipline, regardless, we will want convenience. And unfortunately, convenience and progress do not go together. They are enemies. Comfort and progress do not go together. They are enemies. And if you want comfort, forget progress. Progress is about consistency, persistency. It's about pain. If you don't put effort, you will not achieve. And some people call it pain. I actually call effort an opportunity because when you put effort combined with passion, geared towards an unborrowed vision, and purposefully driven, you address so many issues that many people have not done.
Wow. Wow. I mean, those are really out of the box kind of answers. I mean, really, really very valuable answers. And I just hope that this segment, as I was saying, that it can be put somewhere so that people can really consistently listen to this and change their thinking, change their minds, and in that way, then change the way they act. So
excellent.
I thank you very much for the opportunity to ask you some questions, and I hand over the
baton. Thank you very much, Bob. I mean, thanks for the question. I really appreciate it, and thanks for your ideas. We are at 1 hour 23 minutes, but the conversation has just been going, and it's so exciting that time goes without one feeling. So I think now we will have to run up, and then I would like to get your last word.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so my last word is that thank you very much, first of all, for hosting me in the spot. And I'd say that Africa is a continent that, from the way it is, from the way it was, it was created, is a continent of opportunities.
Right.
What we are trying to do is to help each of us to encourage ourselves, to encourage those out there who are friends of Africa to come and join hands in tapping into these opportunities that are within Africa, and in so doing, then move the continent forward. You cannot have a continent that is the most resourced of any other across the globe, holding last by so many, variables, or by so many. It is holding last by a big margin, and this is not normal. So I think that will be my last word. Africa is a place of opportunity, and we need most of us to come to that realization and to then tap into the solutions process, realizing that out of the solutions that we offer, then that is how we turn this opportunity. We actually harvest these opportunities which are already there.
Excellent. Maybe let me just push you a little bit on that. I know it was your last word. So yes. What is your message to our young girls and boys of the continent who are watching this, or who are to watch this when it re-airs again? What's your message to them?
I'll tell them that
some of them feel that they have reached the end. They don't see these opportunities that we keep mentioning. They feel that, oh no, life is so worse that this is not what they ever expected. And that is a misnomer. What can you tell them?
The first question I ask them is, are you breathing and are you healthy? That is the first question. If you're breathing, if you're healthy, that should be, yes. I mean, that should already be you have within yourself the biggest investment that anybody can ever have. Your life and your health. The next thing is to realize that what you just said now, that we have to appreciate that you're living in a globe, you're living in a world, and the world is not a place of ease. I mean, troubles are everywhere. And nobody will really tell you that they're in a place where they're not challenged or they're not facing some difficulty here and there. So the world is not a place of ease or comfort. It is actually a place of responsibility, taking responsibilities for your actions and achieving actually being of value, as you say, being
Right.
of value. So that is my encouragement with them. That take heart. It is normal. Things being difficult is the norm actually on the globe. But the good thing is you have what it takes to be of value, and all it will take is for you to come to that realization and gather yourself and decide within your mind to be a solutions provider going forward and take advantage of opportunities that come your way. For example, this discussion today, these opportunities that has come your way. The innovative opportunities platform and many other platforms across the country that provide the channel or the conduit within which you can access your talents and become a solution provider. Those are opportunities that they should take.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that dose of advice. And I believe that those who are listening, this advice is not only for the youngsters, but it's good for the all who are young at heart and for everyone. Thank you very much, Bob. And to the viewers out there, it's been a great pleasure having this conversation, and I hope that you did enjoy it. Please, we will be having a lot of these conversations going forward so that at least we can break down the issues, especially of the challenges that are facing Africa and the entire world, and how we can turn every challenge into an opportunity. Because as we know, we are the solutions that we have been waiting for. Until then, it's been a great pleasure, and please, next time. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.